Nobody from my family came to my wedding. The next morning, Dad texted, asking for $8,400. I sent $1. 3 weeks later, he showed up with cops at my house. There were 2 officers on my front lawn when I pulled up, red and blue lights strobing across the faces of neighbors standing in their doorways, my husband's car in the driveway at an angle, like he'd parked in a hurry, and there, standing in the grass I mowed 2 Saturdays ago, gesturing with both hands at Officer McCann like a man explaining a great injustice, was my father, Eduardo Flores, 61 years old, former high school principal, the most respected man in his zip code, according to Eduardo Flores. He saw me step out of the car. He smirked. That smirk. I had been looking at that smirk my entire life, and I had finally, at 38 years old, learned to read exactly what it meant. I've got you now. Officer McCann walked toward me with the careful posture of a man who had already heard one side of a story and wasn't sure what to do with it. Ma'am, your father is claiming you wire transferred funds from his account without authorization. We're looking at a potential felony. My security clearance, 14 years of service, commander's rank, every classified briefing, every operation, everything I had built from nothing while my father told his friends his daughter was just playing soldier. All of it, balanced on 2 syllables. I took one breath. The kind we practice, actually. The kind designed to bring your heart rate down in situations where your heart rate going up will get you killed. Officer, I said, is your body camera on? Yes, ma'am. Good. I opened my banking app and held my phone directly in front of the lens. Show me the theft. I have been in the United States Navy for 14 years. I am a commander, Naval Special Warfare, one of a small number of women to have reached this position, a fact that newspapers occasionally find interesting, and that I find neither interesting nor worth discussing. What I find worth discussing is the work, the training, the 4 a.m. water entries in January, the years of proving over and over again in rooms full of people who were certain I couldn't, that I could. My father never came to a single promotion ceremony, not because he wasn't proud. He would tell you if you asked that he was very proud, that his daughter, the Navy commander, was a point of great pride for the family. He said this at church, at dinner parties, at his retirement celebration 2 years ago, where he made a speech about family values and strong children. He said it to rooms full of people. He never said it to me. I met David Reyes at a conference in San Diego 7 years ago. He was a civilian contractor, aerospace, the kind of quiet, precise man who notices things other people miss and says very little about it until the moment when what he's noticed becomes important. He had dark eyes and a handshake that lasted exactly the right amount of time, and he asked me, 3 minutes into our conversation, what I found hardest about my job. Not what I did, what I found hard. Nobody asks that. I told him the truth, which surprised both of us. We were engaged 11 months later. I called my father the evening after David proposed. I sat on the back porch of our rental in Virginia Beach, watching the sky go orange over the water, and I told him we had set a date and that we wanted the whole family there and that nothing would mean more to me than having him walk me down the aisle. He said he'd have to check his calendar. I should have understood everything right then. I didn't. I understood it later, the way you understand things that were obvious all along, all at once, from a distance, with the specific ache of someone who let hope do too much of their thinking. My family is 5 people. My father, Eduardo, my mother, Rosario, who does whatever Eduardo decides and always has, which is not cruelty on her part so much as a 40-year habit she has never had reason to examine. My brother Marco, the youngest, the son, the one who got the college fund and the new car at 16, and the constant stream of financial support that flowed from my father's account to Marco's lifestyle, like a river finding its natural course downhill. Marco and I had been close when we were young. He had a good heart underneath the entitlement. The entitlement wasn't his fault, or not entirely. It had been built into him by parents who believed that boys needed different things than girls, that boys were the future of the family, that a girl who joined the military was admirable, but a boy who followed his own path was a visionary. Marco's path had involved 3 failed businesses, a divorce, and a series of financial emergencies that my father funded, and that my father sometimes called me about when the emergencies exceeded his capacity. I had contributed, over the years, to the stability of Marco's life without ever being asked whether I wanted to. The contributions were phrased as family obligation. Repayment was never discussed because repayment was not the point. The point was that I was the reliable one, the one who had made something of herself, the one who could be counted on. This is a role that sounds like a compliment. It isn't. The invitations went out in January. The wedding was May 14th. A Saturday, late afternoon ceremony, dinner reception at a venue in Norfolk that David's mother had helped us find, and that made David's mother cry the first time she walked through it, which told me it was the right place. We reserved 3 pews for family, mine and his. White ribbons, printed placards, reserved, family of the bride. By March, I had received RSVPs from David's entire family and 2 cousins on my mother's side who I hadn't seen in 6 years, but who sent a gift card and a card that said, "We're so sorry we can't make it, but we love you." From my immediate family, nothing. I called my mother in April. She said they were planning to come. She said my father had been having some trouble with his knee and the drive was long. She said Marco and his girlfriend were going through something. I said, "I understand. Please just let me know." She said, "Of course, mija." The morning of May 14th, I put on my dress blues and stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite at the venue and called my father. He didn't answer. I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, voice slightly too careful, slightly too warm, the warmth of a woman managing a conversation she doesn't want to be having. We're so sorry, Elena. Your father's knee. Mom. My voice was even. The training is useful for this too. Are you coming? Silence. The specific silence that contains an answer the person isn't willing to say out loud. We love you, she said. I said thank you. I hung up. I looked at myself in the mirror for 30 seconds. Full dress uniform, every decoration in its correct position, hair pinned the way I'd practiced 6 times the night before. A woman who had earned everything she wore and was about to walk down an aisle alone. I picked up my bouquet. I walked out of the bridal suite. I walked down that aisle with 142 people watching and 3 empty pews on my left. I made it through the ceremony. I made it through the dinner. I danced with David, with his father, with his 3 sisters, with his mother who held my face in her hands at the end of the night and said, "You are ours now. Do you understand? You are completely ours." I made it to the hotel bathroom at midnight before I slid down the wall and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. The text came at 8:14 the next morning. I was still in the hotel. David was asleep. I had been awake for an hour watching the ceiling, running the previous day through my mind the way you debrief an operation, cataloging every decision, checking for what could have been done differently. My phone was in my hand. I had it in my hand because I kept checking it, because some part of me, the 7-year-old part, the part that still believed my father was the man he told other people he was, kept expecting an apology. The notification showed his name. My chest did something involuntary, the specific physical sensation of hope arriving without permission. I opened the message. Elena, we need $8,400 for your brother's venue deposit. They've been struggling and the deadline is Tuesday. You've always been the responsible one. Let me know. No congratulations, no acknowledgement, no sorry, no explanation, just a bill. The morning after my wedding, for his favorite son's party. David stirred beside me. Read it over my shoulder. I felt his jaw tighten, not dramatically, not with heat. The quiet tension of a man who has reached the end of a very long rope. Delete it, he said. Don't engage. I took the phone, opened my banking app, pulled up the transfer function, entered my father's account number, the one I had memorized from years of sending money I didn't track and didn't demand back. Entered the amount, €1. Memo, best of luck, sent, blocked his number, put the phone down, picked up my coffee. It was the first thing I had tasted properly in 2 days. Peace lasted exactly 1 week. I unblocked him. Old reflex, older than I want to admit, military training overrides a lot of instincts. It has never fully overridden the instinct that says, what if there's an emergency? What if something is wrong? The messages came in a wall, 41 of them, stacked up from the week of silence like water behind a dam. The first 5 were pleading. The middle 20 were accusatory. The last 16 were something else. Petty little girl, after everything I gave you, you are an embarrassment to this family. You think those medals make you something? You are nothing without us. You have always been nothing. I read them the way I read intelligence assessments, without flinching, cataloging. Then I closed the app and called my executive officer, Commander Patricia Hughes, 14 years in naval intelligence, the person in my chain of command I most trusted to give me an assessment that had no personal investment in the outcome. I told her about the messages. I did not tell her about the wedding. I told her I had a family member making escalating contact, and I wanted her to know in case it became relevant. She thanked me for telling her. She said, keep documenting. Let me know if anything changes. It changed 3 days later. The call came at 9:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. Commander Hughes. Her voice was in a register I recognized, the register she used when something had happened, and she was managing the information before delivering it. Ma'am, your father was outside Gate 4 this morning. He was speaking with personnel there. He was asking about your schedule, your building assignment, your daily arrival times. A Navy commander's location is not public information. There are people whose job it is to ensure that it stays that way. What my father had done was not a family dispute. It was a security threat. I reported it formally that afternoon. Lieutenant Commander James Okafor, Base Security, Naval Station Norfolk, 15 years in military law enforcement. He listened to the account, reviewed the messages I had documented, and opened a formal incident report. He was methodical and direct and completely without sentiment, which was exactly what I needed. Commander Flores, he said, using my rank in the precise way that means the rank is the point. This is being documented as a potential threat to the security of a service member. I want you to understand that means this is no longer a personal matter. I understand. Do you have a current residence address that would be accessible to this individual? David and I had a house in Norfolk. It was not secret. My father had been to it once 4 years ago, a visit that had lasted 40 minutes and consisted mostly of Eduardo walking through each room making assessments out loud. Yes, I said. He's been there. Change your locks if you haven't already. I'm recommending you consider a security camera system if you don't have one, and I want daily contact with me until this situation is resolved. That evening, David installed a ring system front and back and on the side gate while I sat at the kitchen table and read the letter that had arrived that afternoon, delivered to the base, handwritten, addressed to my rank and name, which meant he had researched that, left slanting cursive, the handwriting he had when he was angry. You will die alone with those medals. I did not burn it. I put it in a Ziploc bag and put it under my service pistol in the top drawer and called Commander Hughes. Then I called a lawyer. Marcus Stein had been practicing family and harassment law in Virginia for 19 years. He had handled 11 cases involving military service members and family harassment, and had, according to his firm's website, a particular specialty in cases where civilian harassment intersected with military security concerns. He answered my call himself, which told me he took referrals from Judge Advocate General offices seriously. I told him everything, chronologically, with dates and amounts, and the documentation I had been keeping since the first wave of messages arrived. He listened without interrupting, which is a discipline that most people don't have, and that lawyers develop over years of understanding that the client who talks uninterrupted will tell you things the client who is constantly asked questions never will. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Commander, you have several things working simultaneously. You have documented financial harassment, the text requesting money the morning after your wedding. You have documented threatening communication, the letter. You have documented security breach activity, the visit to Gate 4. These are not the same legal matter, but they're connected, and connecting them is what makes a restraining order viable. I want the restraining order. I'll have a draft to you by Thursday. I also want to flag something. The security breach at the base may trigger JAG involvement. That's not a bad thing. It means the military legal apparatus is on your side, but it's another party at the table. I know how to manage parties at a table. He paused. I think he was deciding whether that was a joke. It wasn't. I'll have the draft Thursday, he said. The Tuesday it happened, I was in a high-level briefing. Lights down, monitors glowing, the kind of room where phones are supposed to be off. Mine was on silent, face down on the table beside my notes. There are situations where I need to be reachable regardless of what room I'm in. It started buzzing at 2:31 p.m. and did not stop. I picked it up under the table. Norfolk PD, Norfolk PD, David, Norfolk PD, David's text. He called the cops. They're at the house. Come home now. I excused myself. The room was too important for excuses, and I made one anyway, because David had never sent a message in all capital letters in 7 years, and that was more important than the room. I drove the 14 minutes from base to home in 9. I have described what I found when I pulled up. The lights, the neighbors, my father in my grass, performing for Officer McCann. What I haven't described is what it felt like to step out of that car and feel 42 years of family mythology collapse into a single image. A man who had never once showed up for me, standing in my yard, trying to use the system I had served for 14 years to destroy me. McCann had walked toward me with the word felony in his mouth, and I had taken one breath, and I had asked about the body camera. I held my phone directly in front of the lens. The banking app was open. Transaction history visible. I scrolled to the relevant date. May 15th, morning after my wedding. Recipient, Eduardo A. Flores. Account ending in the last 4 digits I had memorized from years of sending money. Amount, $1. Memo, best of luck. McCann looked at the screen. He was a careful man, mid-40s, the look of someone who had been doing this long enough to recognize when he's been handed a story that doesn't hold together. He looked at the date. He looked at the amount. He looked at the recipient, which was the account my father had given him as the source of the alleged unauthorized transfer. He looked at my father. My father's face had gone the color of old concrete. This isn't theft, I said. This is $1 I sent to my own father's account with his account number. From my account. With my authorization. That is the definition of the opposite of theft. I paused. What this is harassment, and I'm filing a report. Officer McCann's voice when he turned to my father had a different quality than the voice he'd used with me. Colder. The specific cold of a law enforcement professional who has just realized he has been used. Mr. Flores, you filed a false report and wasted department resources. This is a civil matter, and the report you filed is not supported by the evidence you provided. My father's mask cracked in stages. First the confidence, then the composure. Then something underneath both of them. Something raw and unidentified that I had never seen on his face before. And I had been looking at his face for 42 years. She's lying. He stepped forward. After everything I paid for, everything I gave her, she sends me $1. Like I'm nothing. Like I'm Dad. Command voice. The one we develop over years of training. The one that cuts through helicopter noise at 300 feet. Stop. He stopped. Not because he wanted to. Because the voice was the voice. And the voice is not something you can ignore when it comes from the right place. Get off my property. The officers moved. One on each side of my father. Not grabbing. Just present. Which is often enough. My father allowed himself to be walked to his car. At the curb, he turned back. One hand on the door. And looked at me with the particular expression of a man who has lost a battle he was certain he would win. And hasn't yet figured out how to make it someone else's fault. You think those medals make you better than me? I stood on my porch. The neighbors were still in their doorways. The lights were still strobing. No, Dad, they just mean I earned this. He got in the car. As he pulled away, I saw him pick up his phone. I went inside. Sat down at the kitchen table. David made coffee. Neither of us spoke for a few minutes, which is one of the things I love about David. He understands the value of silence that isn't empty. Then I called Marcus Stein and told him to file the restraining order immediately. Then I called Lieutenant Commander Okafor and told him what had happened. Then I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. I had not spoken to her since the morning of my wedding, when she told me they loved me instead of telling me they were coming. Elena, her voice was careful, managing, already aware that something had happened. Mom, I said, Dad just filed a false police report at my house claiming I committed felony theft. He drove 3 hours to do it. Before that, he came to my military base and asked personnel about my schedule and my location. Silence. He sent me a threatening letter. I have it in an evidence bag. I paused. I am filing for a restraining order tomorrow. I want you to know before it happens. My mother's voice when it came was very quiet. Elena, he loves you. He just, Mom, I stopped her. Not harshly, carefully. The way you stop someone who is about to step off a curb Herb without looking. I know he loves me in the way that he loves me. I'm not disputing that. I'm telling you what he has done, which is separate from love. They can both be true. Another silence. Longer. He was so hurt, she said, about the dollar. I thought about what I could say in response to that, all the possible responses. I thought about the 3 empty pews with white ribbons, the hotel bathroom at midnight, the text at 8:14 a.m. the morning after the most important day of my life, asking me for $8,400 for my brother's party. Goodbye, Mom, I said. I love you. I hung up. The restraining order was granted on a Thursday afternoon by Judge Patricia Wren, Circuit Court of Norfolk, who reviewed the documentation Marcus Stein submitted and issued a 2-year protective order requiring Eduardo Flores to maintain a minimum distance of 500 feet from my person, my residence, and my place of duty. The false report filing resulted in a formal citation from Norfolk PD and a notation in their system. Marcus Stein submitted a copy of the citation to the Circuit Court as supporting evidence for the restraining order. Officer McCann, who had filed a detailed incident report of his own following the encounter, including a summary of the banking evidence shown on camera and my father's behavior when confronted with it, was listed as a supporting witness. Lieutenant Commander Okafor's incident report from the Gate 4 security breach was also submitted, 19 pages. The notation that my father had been asking about the movements and building assignment of a commissioned officer created, per Okafor's assessment, a record that could be pursued under federal law if the behavior continued. My father's attorney, a man in Lexington named Garrett Wells, who handled family matters and had presumably not anticipated being involved in a security breach documentation, called Marcus Stein the week after the restraining order was issued and asked about a path to resolution. Marcus called me. He wants to apologize, Marcus said. I looked out the window. The front yard, back to normal. No lights, no neighbors at their doors. Tell his attorney the restraining order stands for its full term, I said. Tell him I wish him well. Tell him I'm not interested in a conversation right now. Marcus passed the message. Wells did not call back. I found out 3 weeks later from my cousin Adriana, one of the two who had sent the gift card and the card that said "We love you," that my brother Marco's wedding had been called off. The venue deposit had apparently never been paid because the $8,400 my father had asked me for had not materialized from any source, and Marco's girlfriend had decided in the intervening weeks that she was not ready to get married to a man whose family was involved in a federal harassment matter involving a military officer. Adriana told me this on the phone with the slightly guilty tone of someone who knows they're delivering information the other person is going to have complicated feelings about. I thanked her. I told her the gift card had been spent on champagne at the reception, and that David and I had toasted her and her husband specifically. She laughed, the laugh of someone who needed permission to find something funny and had just received it. Is there anything you need? She asked. I'm good, I said. And I was. That was the honest answer. Not because everything was resolved. Some things don't resolve. They just settle into a shape you can live around. Not because the grief was gone. The grief of having a father who is capable of love and incapable of being a father is a specific and durable kind of grief that doesn't go away because you won a legal filing. But I was good. David and I spent the following Memorial Day weekend at home. Not traveling, not celebrating, not performing anything for anyone. We ordered takeout on Saturday night and ate it on the back porch and watched the sky do what the sky does in late May, which is turn colors you don't have names for in the half hour before dark. I had my coffee. David had his. The Ring cameras blinked their quiet green at the corners of the yard. Somewhere, my father was living his life, telling his version of events to the people at his church, at his dinner parties, at whatever gathering was next on his calendar. I didn't know what his version was. I didn't need to. I had the banking app, I had the body camera footage, I had the restraining order, I had 19 pages of federal security documentation, and I had this. A quiet yard, a husband who asks what I find hardest, a sky going colors I can't name. My father used to say that the medals didn't matter. That service didn't make you anything. That what made a person was family. He wasn't entirely wrong about that last part. He just had the wrong